folks. Welcome to the show. I'm the Game OverThinker. This is my intern, Ivan. Ivan, say hello to the nice people.
If you say my name backwards, it's a reference to something.
You know, this is the 73rd episode of the Game OverThinker, but it's also the first one in a while that isn't carrying the weight or baggage of previous episodes built on top of it. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to step back in and introduce new viewers to the way we do things around here. Ivan, would you care to elaborate on that?
You typically waste everyone's time with a minute or two of shtick before the opening credits, usually in reference to some long-form parody sketch you're carrying on in the margins of the series.
Perhaps you could elaborate a little further for the nice people?
Sure. Although your primary function is to provide commentary on games and game culture, about a year ago you were attacked by the Anti-Thinker, your evil double from an alternate universe. You defeated him, but the battle ripped a hole in the space-time continuum, allowing creatures and powers from the video game world to cross over into the human world. Since then, you've been conscripted by Police Commissioner Bunnyface.
It's Buonafaccio.
To track and dispatch rogue video game creatures. Amid this, you subsequently fought and destroyed two elementally powered ninjas, Pyrothinker and Cryothinker, only to learn that their initial rampage against arcades and game stores had inadvertently released your 1980s counterpart Retrothinker from cryogenic sleep. An evil force yet unknown to us somehow manipulated Retrothinker's time displacement depression and transformed him into the undead lord of video zombies, the Necrothinker, who you fought, defeated, and finally restored to human form in our most recent episode.
And that brings us up to speed?
You also took 3 magic stones representing the elements of fire, water, and earth from the two ninjas and Necrothinker, respectively.
Anything else?
Our senator is a ninja named Jack Lieberson, who you once supported in a public service ad.
Anything else?
No, that's pretty much it.
So we have no pressing business now, correct?
Correct.
And thus what should we be doing now?
Starting the actual show, sir.
Well, alright. Cue the opening credits. You know, given that I'm a video game commentator here and a film critic elsewhere, I get asked the following question a lot. Why are there no good video game movies? I also get asked, when will there be good video game movies? How do you make good video game movies? How would you make a good video game movie? Well, let's dig into that. Well, the first thing to remember is that good is a subjective term. I mean, some people will tell you that several pretty good video game movies have already been made, and I'd be more or less in that camp. The bigger problem is, and I really hate saying this, but I'm sorry, in a lot of cases, making a good movie out of certain games would also probably mean making a movie that really wouldn't give gamers what many of them are looking for. The fact is, unless we're talking about some kind of high-concept mood piece, good movies come from good scripts, and those good scripts come from good stories, and most video games don't have those. Now, that's not to say that all game stories are bad, but almost all of them are ill-suited in their unmolested form to movie-making, and even then, the best you can objectively say about them is that, hey, that was a pretty good story, ... for a video game. This is why I think the Prince of Persia movie actually does represent kind of a high watermark for these things. Yeah, the movie was just a slick, kinda empty-headed Douglas Fairbanks ripoff, and really, that's all the Prince of Persia titles ever were on a story level. Ditto why I'm not all bent out of shape that the Resident Evil movies are just slicked-up B-grade zombie junk. I mean, no shit, it's Resident Evil. But those are recent games, made in an era when video games were expected to have at least the fig leaf of a complete narrative. A lot of gaming's most popular and enduring franchises come from the so-called Golden Age, when a video game's story was really more of a setup or suggestion than a full-blown arcing narrative. I mean, let's be frank about this. A proper Legend of Zelda movie is almost certainly a bigger box office draw on multiple levels than, say, a proper Heavy Rain movie. But you're gonna have to work a lot harder to hammer a movie-ready plot out of Zelda, which is always much more about the dungeon exploring and item management gameplay than it is about the story structure. What I'm getting at is, in order to make a good video game movie, sometimes you may end up having to toss out some of what people consider the main parts of the game. This may result in an overall better movie, but it may also leave fans of a certain game feeling that they've been let down by not seeing some of the things that they most liked about the game visualized in live action, which in many cases is the reason they wanted to see a movie in the first place. For example, Ubisoft is producing an Assassin's Creed movie. Now, I think this is a good idea. I don't necessarily love the entire Assassin's Creed series, but it's a good foundation, and it actually has a pretty interesting premise story-wise. But for a movie, I see lots of problems, starting with the very thing that makes Assassin's Creed more than just an open-world period action game. The whole framing device with Desmond is cool in the games because it's obviously building to some kind of important revelation and character development for him, and it allows the game to explain away the more video game-ish aspect of its time progression and mission system. In a movie, on the other hand, that's going to cause all kinds of narrative problems. As cool as you can make the action scenes for Altair or Ezio or whichever guy they end up using, a passive movie audience lacking the player-avatar connection to them might find their stories lacking emotional connection or all-important story tension by virtue of the whole thing being a simulation. You could mitigate that somewhat by having the same actor play Desmond and the assassin, but then you're heading into Walter Mitty territory, and I'm not sure that's where Assassin's Creed fans want the movie to go. Or you could just leave Desmond's story out, which a lot of people ask anyway, but then aren't you just kind of making a tackier ninja version of Kingdom of Heaven? And did you hear that there already is a Halo movie? Yeah, it hasn't gotten a ton of press for some reason, but Microsoft actually went and made a feature-length live-action Halo movie tied in with the upcoming 4th game. If you're wondering how they solved the problem of Halo's main character being a one-note masked homunculus whom fans never want to see outside of his helmet, well, they made him not the main character. Instead, the film will follow the exploits of a new recruit whose experiences will involve Master Chief and the more familiar characters, but won't star them. The movie is going to be released over Xbox Live in episode format and then put back together for the special editions of Halo 4. How will fans react to this version? We'll see. I think this might be the key for turning a lot of games into movies, if in fact that's what we decide we want to do. Unlike a book, a video game isn't only dependent on its story. It's also all about gameplay, aesthetics, and overall mood. In many cases, you can reach to those things in order to shape a narrative that may differ from the game, but might actually make for a better film. Basically, instead of approaching video game movies like making films out of books, approach it the way you do adapting a song to the plot of a movie, or in the way that historical films often add characters and events in order to give the audience more of a narrative through line. For example, let's look at Call of Duty. Now, in the past, the idea of a Call of Duty movie is one of those things I've dismissed as a non-starter. The games are trying too hard to be movies already, and any faithful adaptation would probably just end up being a generic military action movie, borrowing the game's title and little else. But thinking more deeply on the subject, I no longer agree with that sentiment. At least not entirely. I maintain that you won't be making a good movie out of Call of Duty's story, but you might be able to make one out of its gameplay and its main visual conceit. I mean, what's the point of the modern warfare games? To put you in the middle of the action. Granted, that's the purpose of all first-person shooters, but the Call of Duty games specifically want to put you in a battlefield situation that resembles the current ones you see on the news and in command of realistic, up-to-date combat weaponry. Well, why not just do that for the movie? Do the whole thing in first person. A gimmick, yes, but potentially a gimmick with purpose. See, in the games, we only see the action because that's the fun part to play through, but in a movie, you could also see other things a soldier experiences through a soldier's eyes. Yeah, still have plenty of shooting, but also training, boot camp, deployment, travel, leisure time, getting wounded, getting fixed up, walking through a marketplace, or a city square and not knowing for sure who's friend or foe. In the right hands, that could be an incredibly unique movie-going experience for audiences. You want to know what it's like to be over there in the shit? Well, this is as close as you're gonna get without enlisting yourself. With the right balance of action, story, and characterization, it could actually say something meaningful or even profound about the ever-widening gulf of perspective and experience between those of us who do the fighting and those of us they're fighting for. Now, wouldn't that be something? Taking the series that's pretty much the Michael Bay movies of gaming and turning it into what would amount to an art house action movie. And that's not the only game that I think might benefit from a more high-minded approach. Take Metroid. If you just made a straight-up action movie out of it, well, congratulations, you've made Aliens. Again. But what if you actually more or less filmed the game? A character exploring a mysterious alien underworld full of strange creatures and bizarre sights with next to zero dialogue? That could easily lead to some 2001 or Terrence Malick shit right there. Now, those are two extreme examples. I'm not going to sit around and suggest that some high-minded, arty approach is the best way to adapt every game. A lot of the time, the answer strikes me as pretty straightforward, to the point that you have to wonder why the filmmakers decided they had to do everything the hard way. Like, remember the Double Dragon movie? What the hell happened there? Double Dragon, and really every street brawler, was ripped off from a movie. It was called The Warriors, and it was awesome. The template is right there. Same deal with Street Fighter. It's a game about a martial arts tournament. Some of the best action movies ever made are about martial arts tournaments. Master of the Flying Guillotine, Duel to the Death, Enter the Dragon. It's a great, efficient device with which to keep lots of interesting characters in one place and make sure that a fight scene is always right around the corner when you need one. So why was the movie rocking that whole cut-rate G.I. Joe thing? Mortal Kombat at least got it right in that one department. They took a game about people who go to a supernatural fighting tournament and pretty much made that movie. Hell, they even stuck in the traveling by boat sequence from Enter the Dragon for good measure. The only real problem was that they made a Mortal Kombat movie but took out the one thing that everyone loves about Mortal Kombat. Oh, and before anyone asks, I saw the Mortal Kombat web series from a little while back, and no, not for me. I mean, I understand what they were going for, but it just didn't work. I would honestly, given the choice, rather watch that damn TV show again. For real. The problem is that if you let the characters in a movie actually do to each other what they do in a Mortal Kombat game, the movie will be over really quickly and nobody will be back for the sequel. But here's an idea. Just have Shang Tsung explain that his already magical island gives everybody in the tournament some kind of Wolverine-level healing factor while they're there. I mean, not like immortal, they can still die from fatalities or if their heart or brain gets destroyed, but this way everybody can take crazy bloody battle damage and still participate in more than one fight. Problem solved. Yeah. You want that one, Warner Brothers? Call me. Alright, I know. This has been a little small potatoes so far. I mean, this is the Game OverThinker. You want to hear what I think about movies based on the classics. Well, alright, let's take a look at a few. Mega Man seems hard to adapt at first because half the fun is the designs for the various robot characters, and you can lose a lot of that charm when you try to translate it into actors in costumes. But why do you have to do it that way? I mean, these guys are supposed to be robots, all of them, not people, so why not have real people play Dr. Light, Dr. Wily, and other humans I'm assuming must exist in the Mega Man universe, and then do Mega Man and the other robots looking more or less like themselves from the games with CGI, puppets, motion capture, and all that business. I mean, who's to say that bulgy and manga-esque isn't just the trendy way to design robots in 2000X? Look at what we're designing them to look like now. Castlevania. Easy. Okay, Simon Belmont goes through Dracula's castle to kill Dracula. You've got a good guy, you've got a building, you've got a bad guy. Yeah, Castlevania, Die Hard with Dracula. I repeat, Die Hard with Dracula.
Die Hard with Dracula.
See, that's already a great pitch. I'm amazed someone hasn't already done that with or without the Castlevania license. Sonic the Hedgehog should probably stay a cartoon, though I am still looking forward to the fan film. The Legend of Zelda. Okay, I don't know why everyone thinks this is so difficult. The hardest thing about a Zelda movie would be getting Nintendo to actually license something for a movie again after what happened last time. Everyone gets hung up on Zelda because they assume the games themselves are too convoluted plot-wise, or you'd have to try and fit in all the bizarre stuff that's become part of the series from Ocarina onward, and I think that's easily solved by just going back to the basics. Triforce. 3 of them. Ganon's got one, Zelda's got the other, so he takes her. Impa tells Link to go find the last one before Ganon's guys can get to it. Don't need to be in a bunch of different dungeons and different pieces, just one dungeon will do, it's only one movie. There you go, there's your film. Now you just need good actors and a good director to make that otherwise kind of basic fantasy setup more interesting. You don't have to show him getting every weapon, let him start with all his basic survival gear and have him get the Master Sword because pulling the sword from the stone scenes are money. Maybe involve the Ocarina, but have it work like the recorder from the first game. Use Navi so he has someone to talk to.
And because she's awesome. Dude, you have no idea. Navi and Ocarina was Robinson joining the majors for us.
Well then what's Tinkerbell?
Oh, don't get me started on that house fairy.
Okay then.
Also, Navi, hot. Crazy hot. If you were a fairy, you'd understand. Like, ridiculous.
Anyway, you don't need to do the Kokiri thing, just let Link be a wandering woods guy like he was back in the day. Don't need to get into the Temple of Time stuff, don't need to go to the Twilight Realm, don't need to talk about Skyloft, keep it simple the first time out. I guess maybe you should include the Light World, Dark World thing from Link to the Past, but maybe don't do any actual long-term crossing over until the end. In fact, have the last fight take place there. Visually interesting, decent bit of fan service, and you'll have an excuse to use Ganondorf Ganon and Blue Pig Ganon. And then, there's Mario. Super Mario Bros. Isn't just the greatest and most famous of all video game franchises, it's also one of the only major series whose visuals and gameplay still openly maintain a blatant connection all the way back to the very beginning of the medium, with an aesthetic and level design that to this day is still based primarily around platforms, blocks, switches, enemies as obstacles, and color-coded everything. You can draw a straight line from the present day all the way back to the arcades through this one series. Super Mario Bros., after all, was titled literally, an expansion of the enemy-bopping, block-hitting gameplay of original Mario Bros., which in turn owed a lot to Joust. This is why the Mario universe feels so ill-suited to live action at first glance. It's still a much more expansive rendering of a world that was never meant to look anything but abstract. So how would I get around that? 2 words. Reverse engineering. Let me explain. Remember the NES Batman game? Wasn't exactly a one-to-one adaptation of the movie, but you did get the basic outline. Batman was the good guy, Joker was the bad guy, Batman had a car, Gotham City, a chemical plant, and an old church were involved, etc. Now, consider this. Pretend for a moment that the game had come first instead of the other way around. Then, try and figure the hypothetical formula by which this would have turned into this. Then, apply that to Mario. Imagine what the movie this game was based on would have looked like. Then, make that movie. For example, instead of trying to explain floating bricks, maybe there was a really memorable scene in the hypothetical movie that involved fighting on and smashing brick bridges and such. Hey, maybe that's the part where they fight the Hammer Brothers. Instead of pipes being randomly everywhere, maybe there's some kind of swamp/aqueduct system they use to sneak into Bowser's fortress, and it's all full of piranha plants. Beyond that, all the various monsters and enemies aren't hard to work out at all. Like half of Bowser's army are turtles just like him, and there's a long history of giant monster turtles working just fine in live action. CGI can do just about anything these days, after all, and if you still feel the need for something more humanoid for Mario and Luigi to knock around in the action scenes, there's always the Shy Guys. As for the backstory, I think you kind of have to go back to the "they're from Brooklyn" thing. I know, it's not canon, whatever canon means in this case, but it solves a lot of problems. Chief among them being why the 2 best warriors in a fantasy kingdom are plumbers. Answer: they aren't from the Mushroom Kingdom. They're from Earth, and the difference in physics accounts for them having super strength, speed, jumping, and freaky magical reactions to the native plants. I mean, that's how it worked for John Carter.
And you'd know that if anyone had seen that movie.
And since their Earthling clothes would be just as supercharged for durability as they are, it excuses them still wearing the same stuff all the time. Plus, it gives them incentive for questing beyond saving this princess they just met, i.e. maybe Peach has the power to send them home. And you get potential character arcs for both Mario and Luigi that can play like fleshed-out versions of their stock game personas as the brave one and the scared one. Like, maybe back in Brooklyn, Luigi was always totally chill about just being a plumber, but Mario wanted something more exciting. Now they're in this crazy fantasy kingdom doing big-ass Lord of the Rings quest stuff, and Mario is all about it, but Luigi just wants to get shit done and go home. Over the course of their journey, Luigi maybe learns to embrace new experiences, and he's capable of more than he knows. Well, maybe Mario learns to appreciate what he had back home and to be careful what you wish for. Drama! If you'll forgive me a bit of self-reference, I really do think that video game movies get tripped up by people overthinking the work. Lots of games have simple stories, yes, but that also means a lot of them are grounded in the same archetypal, iconic frameworks as some of our most classic stories and popular movies. It really shouldn't be this hard to get the game-to-movie transition ironed out. Comic book fans had to wait nearly 50 years to get from here to here. Hopefully gamers won't have to wait quite as long. Well, there you have it, folks. The Game Overthinker on video game movies. Ivan, tell the people what we do now that the episode is over.
Well, now that the overthinking is done, we typically pick back up with whatever little adventure you're currently engaged in. But right now, you don't have one.
Yep, today we're just chilling. So I guess that means we roll the credits and call it a show, yes?
Actually, sir, no.
Come again?
Well, sometimes we actually cut away to some other goings-on that, while not directly involving you or me at the moment, are nonetheless relevant. In fact, frequently this creates anticipatory dramatic tension, as the audience is now in possession of important information before we are.
No shit. Huh. Well, everyone, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and enjoy whatever the hell it is you're about to see.
We'll see you next time on The Game Overthinker.
This is most vexing. 3 stones I placed in the hands of would-be champions. 3 stones the accursed Overthinker now possesses. Only a matter of time before he discovers their true purpose. And mine.
You have placed too much faith in the stones, my master. Like Virgin when they released Voodoo Lounge. It may be time for a new tactic.
1 final stone remains in play.
And if its bearer fails, the Overthinker will have claimed all 4.
You forget your place, minion. But there is truth in what you say. What do you suggest?
I beg you, my master, give me a second chance. Restore my powers and my human form. Let me end the Overthinker's life. I swear I will not fail you again.
Very well, but take heed. Disappoint me once more, and you will suffer beyond comprehension. Anti-Thinker.
What up, Chief? I'm back.